I don't believe in political correctness. I believe people should say what they want to say and feel free to say what they want to say. This is the United States of America. We have a constitution that ensures free speech, and if a person wants to express a certain opinion, they have a right to express a certain opinion. What I find is that back in the 1990s, liberals came up with the concept of political correctness as a way to silence differing opinions. And back in the 90s, this is when the term politically correct came out. People came up with this idea of not offending people because they didn't want to hear certain viewpoints, certain counterpoints, and certain opinions. And the great irony of it is the people who try to silence people with their shaming language by saying they were politically incorrect are usually the ones who often are the most offensive, and they also express the most offensive opinions. Because when I look at the whole concept of political correctness, the whole idea is to, control people's dialogue, control people's language, and find a way, to silence people so that they won't express a differing opinion or a counterpoint. They don't want anybody to use certain words, certain phrases. They don't want anybody to, speak in a certain manner. What they want to do is, again, control the dialogue, control the narrative, and dictate to people what the terms of what they say should be. Now, I have no problem using words like retarded, and I have used them in other videos, like such as politically retarded Negroes, and I have no problem using the word Negro because I understand what these words mean. They are not meant to be offensive. They are meant to prove a point. And I am not going to, change my dialogue or change my narrative because as a publisher, I understand the impact of the First Amendment, the power of the First Amendment, and everybody's right to free speech. Now, if you don't like what somebody is saying, again, in this World Wide Web, all you have to do is head over to that red X on the left hand side of your Mac or the right hand side of your PC and click the red X. And 15 years ago, when the World Wide Web was young, people understood this. But I'm looking at people today, and this politically correctness is just gone too far. It's all bordering on censorship. People, they see a differing opinion, and they make every effort to try to convince you that their opinion is the right opinion. I've seen people head over to an atheist YouTube channel or an atheist website and make every effort to try to tell that person that they're wrong. And it clearly shows me, how dysfunctional people are in this age of political correctness. You're going to go to somebody else's webpage where they're expressing an opinion and tell them that their opinion is wrong. And moreover, I've seen people go over to a goth's webpage and tell them that they're wrong. I mean, and then spend days and weeks trying to convince people that their opinion is wrong and or their opinion is offensive or their views are offensive. And that's all because they don't fit within a certain narrative that your liberals have created. Your liberal comes in and says, you shouldn't use offensive language. You shouldn't express certain views. Well, I thought, again, this is America, and people have a right to free speech. Now, with free speech comes consequences. If you express an opinion that people don't like, they don't have to support you, and that's goes with it. But the people who are expressing those opinions know this firsthand. They know that I'm expressing this opinion. There may be some ramifications and consequences as a result of it, but these are my views. These are my core values, and these are not up for debate. These are not up for discussion. And I've run into these types of, politically correct people and their dysfunction right on my blog, www.shawnsjames.blogspot.com. I remember back in 2012, I wrote a blog called Why 70% of Black Women Are Single. I'm going to leave a link to that blog in the description box. And many black women were so offended by this blog, some of them even talking about how I should be banned. Now, here we are living in the United States of America, where free speech is guaranteed by our Constitution. And because I presented a honest opinion based on my observations as a man about black women, and then you had black women talking about how I needed to be banned, and how I need to be censored, all based on this so-called platform of political correctness, that because I'm presenting an opinion people don't want to hear, or viewpoints that people don't want to hear, so I need to be banned. But in the whole hypocrisy of it all is, while they're talking about I need to be banned, my blog needs to be banned for presenting an opinion on why 70% of black women are single, these same black women won't say a word about a pornographic website called Ghetto Gaggers, where black women are called the N-word, they are slapped, they are beaten, they are made to sit in their own filth, they have watermelon shoved down their throats, many of them are humiliated and degraded. This is politically safe, but me expressing an opinion on why black women are single is politically incorrect. Do we see the hypocrisy here in this whole concept of political correctness? What we consider opinions offensive, but actions are perfectly fine. I mean, this is why it's so backwards. And as a writer, I do not subscribe to political correctness. I mean, even in many of my projects, I will use whatever phrases I need to use, whatever words I need to use. I am not about pleasing people, because I learned a hard lesson, way back when I wrote the Cassandra Cookbook, when I published this book back in 2008 about political correctness. Now, I had put in, because one of the characters who in the story is a down low man, and I tried to be politically correct and try to present a more safe and sanitized way of making commentary about homosexuals, and it killed the sales on the book. But when I presented, the original opinions and original views that I put into the original manuscript, and my new title, Recipe for Success, where I presented, I went back to the politically incorrect version. Politically incorrect version of this book, Cassandra Cookbook, sold better than the politically correct version. And I think it's because I stayed true to my message and stayed true to my views. And you can't let anyone change your message or your views. And this was the lesson I learned with Cassandra Cookbook back in 2008, because I changed some phrases so that it could sound a little more sanitized and be more sensitive to people. I mean, the book got good reviews, but the whole thing is that the sales died. But when I went to A Recipe for Success and I changed back to what I originally wrote, I had no problems, and the sales, went up on that book, and the book did fairly well, and it actually did better when I kept it true to the original views. But again, I don't subscribe to political correctness anymore, and I never will, and I never have to really subscribe to it, because to me, if an artist is expressing an opinion that's offending you, pretty much that artist is making you think. If a writer is expressing an opinion that you find offensive, it's pretty much because he's making you think. And if a person is presenting views that you don't like, you hate them because they're making you think. And you hate thinking. And this is what I find with a lot of Americans, is that they hate thinking. What they want is clean, sanitized, stuff that they can just goes in one ear without the other. There's no ideas being presented. There's no presentation of anything, thought-provoking. Because most Americans, they really just want to medicate themselves whenever they get in front of their idiot boxes, or whenever they get in front of a camera to make a video. They really don't want to produce any type of content that requires any sort of thought, or presents any sort of ideas. Whenever somebody starts to produce, content that forces you to think, they start to get upset, they start to get angry, and they're only getting upset and angry is because they're being forced to think about something. And this is what happens in many cases, with people in this whole politically correct group. These politically correct people, they want to control the dialogue and the narrative, and they don't want anybody to offend them, but it's okay for them to offend others. And when you express, a counterpoint, or you disagree with their opinions, here they are coming in with their shaming language to try to silence you, or they try to organize all sorts of boycotts to, try to force peer pressure on other groups to silence you, or they make ad hominem attacks to silence you. Now, again, I have dealt with this these PC type people have tried to censor me and tried to silence me for years, even on with my blog. And I've had people, they have read my books and then go to my blog and then say, "Hey, I'm never going to buy another one of your books again." Well, I'm sorry if you don't want to buy my books because I expressed an opinion in a blog like why 70% of black women are single or why real men avoid single mothers, then I don't need your money. It's not that I it's not that it's just simple as that. I don't need your money because here's the whole thing. If you're offended by an opinion I put in a blog, then you'll also be offended by my books because, you know, I put almost the same opinions in many of my books that I do in my blogs, and I even put those same opinions in the videos. So you saying you're offended by me presenting one point, well, then you must be offended by everything that I put out because I don't subscribe again to political correctness. I will say what I have to say, and you have a right to click out of the page, and you have a right to not buy what you want to buy. This is my opinions. These are my views, and that's not up for debate. If you want to support my stuff, hey, go ahead. That's just the way it is. But people these days with this political correctness, it's gone too far. And I look at people these days. They're saying they're too afraid to even tell jokes or do comedy. And what people don't understand is that comedy, again, is an art form. I'm a guy who writes comedy, and there's comedy was always meant to be offensive. I mean, comedy makes fun of situations. That's what comedy is. It makes fun of, stressful situations, trouble situations. This is part of writing. It's part of the whole comedy thing. You're making fun of something that you're observing and, showing us why we should laugh at it. Or some people in comedy, they're trying to help us laugh at a situation. Comedy, by nature is an offensive art. And people think that comedy, is going to be sanitized and politically correct. No, comedy has never been politically correct. If you understand the history of comedy, if you understand the history of satire, it's always been offensive. I mean, and that's because comedians always find ways to make you think. I mean, this has gone back as far, as the 1950s with Lenny Bruce and then vaudeville and George Carlin. Comedians make observations about things that make you think. Now, there are some people who are pretty much plain old racist, and that's just the way they are. Then I say let them have a platform, but you don't have to support it. And the whole thing is that once this guy sees that nobody's supporting his platform, that's just the way it is. But don't try to shame the guy. Don't try to silence the guy. I say let the guy have his opinion. If the guy has an opinion you don't like, then don't support him. But the whole thing is that political correctness, as I see it, all it does is a way for people to try to censor people, try to silence people, and try to shame them into not expressing opinions they don't want to hear. And I've learned, to just as a writer and an artist to just express whatever opinions I want and present whatever views I want and whatever stories I like. And what I find is that when I express the opinions and the views I want to express, people connect with it. They like it. They want to share it with their friends. And I have done books that are completely politically incorrect, like You're All About Nikki here. This is a compilation of TV scripts I did for a teen sitcom, and there's a lot of political incorrectness in here. Main character, Nikki Desmond, is extremely, would be considered offensive by many people, but yet this is one of the most popular books in the SJS Direct imprint. The ebook is one of the best sellers, and people all over the world. I mean, I have gotten sales on this book from the U.S. to places like Japan and China on this book. And it's one of the most popular books, again, in the SJS Direct imprint. And I pull no punches in talking about race and race relations. I think pull no punches talking about, various things and various issues. I mean, I have people using words that people would consider offensive for a teen sitcom, but people buy this book all over the world. Black people buy it, white people buy it, foreign people buy it, and most people, in spite of the political incorrectness, aren't offended by it, and they'll go out and pass it along and share it with their friends. Same thing with All About Maryland. I pretty much pull no punches in this one either. And both of these books were meant to be read together. And they were both meant to be, a commentary on your entertainment industry and Hollywood. And, show the contrast between, real life and a television world. And they were both, again, because I pulled no punches, books were extremely popular, and I present all sorts of different jokes in there, and people are not offended. And this is what I find, with political correctness. Again, and it's also, the other thing with political correctness is that it's a place for liberals and racists to hide. They use the term politically correct to hide, because your racist and your liberal will tell you, you know, oh, this is offensive, and then they're they're dictating the net, and because they're dictating this narrative and they're dictating the viewpoint, they're using this as a shade to cover up under. And meanwhile, in the back, while you're afraid to express your views, they're saying things in the back using N words, using B words, using H words, and all sorts of stuff behind the scenes. But they'll tell you you can't say that. But then they're out saying in the back again. These politically correct people are the biggest hypocrites in the room, and they sit there and they don't want you to talk, but they want everybody else, to remain. They want you to remain silent, but they'll express all of their views, just like I presented in my argument a few minutes ago about people telling me that the blog "Why 70% of Black Women Are Single" is offensive and should be banned, but the ghetto gaggers gets a pass, the twerking gets a pass, and all these other other images of African American women that are presented in media are fine, but a blog telling you why a black woman is single, perfectly fine, gets a pat. It's not perfectly fine. It's offensive, needs to be banned, needs to be censored, and it shows you how backwards people are in the case of things. I say let people say what they want to say, and if that's their opinion, you have a right to do this. Again, if you're online, you have a right to take your red X on the Mac on the left-hand side and click out, and you have a right to take your PC and go on the right-hand side and click out. If you don't like somebody's video, do the exact same thing. If you don't like somebody's TV show, if they're presenting views you don't like, you know what? The best thing for you to do is to click out. That's the best thing to do, or to just hit that remote button on the remote, find a channel you like, and find content you like. I mean, this is the United States of America. If you don't like something, and it offends you, pretty much, you have a right to not support it. You have a right to not deal with it. But what I find with today, with so many butthurt people, they see something that they don't like, and the first thing they want to do is try to protest it or to censor it, and say that they want to try to get it taken off the air. Now, I don't like certain things like your no good deeds and your empires. I don't agree with the narratives on these shows. Now, I'll express an opinion about it, and I'll be disappointed when they become successful, but I understand their right to free speech and their right to express their views regarding it, just like I have a right to express a counter view based on what I have seen. But I don't believe in being politically correct, because it's just too much of an incubator. It's what liberals use to censor people. It's what liberals use to hide their real views about people, about, and it's just something that they created so that they won't be, so they can, they can express their views, but you can't express yours. And if you can't see the hypocrisy in your politically correct person, then I don't know, because I see the hypocrisy in political correctness every day. These people tell you, one thing is offensive, but then they'll go out and participate in behavior that's twice as offensive, and then tell you that there's something wrong with you when there's something wrong with them, because, again, all they want to do is control the narrative and dictate how everybody should act, and they think that their way is the only way. That's all I have to say for this video. If you would like, you can pick up All About Maryland in paperback on Amazon.com, and it's also available on Kindle Unlimited. If you have Amazon Prime, you can borrow it for free. And you can pick up the fabulous first season of All About Nikki on Amazon.com in paperback. This one's on Kindle for 99 cents. A lot of the comedy is hilarious. People love this book, and they love this book, and they're not offended by any of the opinions I present in it. And you can read many of my classic blogs on www.shawnsjames.blogspot.com. I have a lot of content that may offend you, and it may make you think. And it's a very popular blog. It has over 1 million hits, and I urge you to go read some of the content. Again, that's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.